Find the domain and range of f of x equals to square root of x minus 4 plus 3. Let's try this. Okay, first let's think about the domain of this function. What are the what is the domain of a function? It's the collection of allowed values for x. What are those values of x that can be plugged in here? Okay. Now, what do you have to watch out for when you see a square root?
Negative.
For negatives, okay? You can't have negatives inside the square root. You should always have positives, right? So you should think about this condition, that x minus 4 cannot be negative. It can only be 0 or positive. So if you solve this for x, you get x 4 or greater. And that's actually the only requirement for a valid input. Okay? You can plug in anything into x as long as x is 4 or above. There's no fraction or something. That's okay. So therefore, you can say the domain is now 4 to infinity. How do you write that down in terms of integral notation? 4, yeah, comma infinity, and what kind of bracket?
Inclusive.
Square. Now for the range, you are probably better off with actually having to graph. Okay? If you have the graph, it's easier to find the answer. In fact, because there are functions where drawing the graph is really hard, questioning the range of a function can be really hard to answer. Okay? If you have a range question, it could get hard really quickly. Domain is easier to solve. Okay, so let's try to draw this graph. So what's the graph that we're trying to draw? Y equal to square root of x minus 4 plus 3. Now let's start with the original function, the prototype of this function. So before any translation was applied, you should think about y equal to square root of x, and the graph of y equal to square root of x is this, which you should memorize. Now let's think about what happens if you draw the graph of y equal to square root of x minus 4. What happens to the graph?
Shifts to the right.
Shifts 4 to the right. Okay? If you modify something to the variable, the graph will do the opposite of what you think. So even if you're subtracting 4 from x, it actually moves to the right, not left. Okay? So here's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes there. Okay, now using these two examples, you can draw this graph. Okay, this is the only difference from this graph to that graph is this added plus 3. What would that plus 3 do? It raises 3 up because this plus 3 is not doing anything to a variable, it's doing something to the function. Okay? If you do something to the function, then it will change the y direction in the direction you would think it would go. So it will act exactly as you would predict. It goes up by 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and here's. Now looking at this, what is the range? 3 to infinity. Those are the answers.